Welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I'm Koya Webb, founder of Get Loved Up, where we inspire you to love yourself more, love others more, and love the planet more. Each week, I'll interview a special guest who will share their insights on how they practice daily self-care, tackle tough challenges in life, and thrive in the world one breath at a time. You will be inspired to take control of your life as you heal yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, and create a reality in alignment with your deepest passions. Let's get loved up. Everybody's searching for something to fill that empty space. Ayanna, it is such an honor to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm present. I've been looking forward to this since we scheduled it. So I'm ready to just kind of honor the space and just be present with this conversation. It's a really important conversation.
It really is. And I'm so excited because healthy boundaries and setting healthy boundaries is something that is so tough for me. I am a lover. I love people. I love being around people. I'm an empath. I'm a giver. And I just pour. I got that messy love. I just spread it all over the place. And I really have had to learn how to set healthy boundaries. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of your background, first of all, and the work that you do and how you've had to set boundaries through your life?
Yeah. In putting my history in a context of boundaries, I would say that I learned at a pretty young age how difficult it is to set boundaries. I'm a daughter of immigrants. I'm a Black woman who was raised in the suburbs of, a white town in New Jersey. So in a number of ways, kind of navigating these pushes and pulls about who I'm allowed to be in these different spaces when there are a lot of rules coming to me about who I was supposed to be. And I think a lot of people experience the difficulties of like the should versus who you actually are. And those can be a lot of our first experiences with recognizing like something feels violated, but it doesn't feel safe enough, right, to set my boundary, right? I also don't want to be perceived as not being likable, not being kind, not being open. So I think because of those earlier experiences, I had a different experience with being allowed to be myself in these spaces, which more than likely probably led me into the field, right? And recognize like, oh, this is hard for people. Like, it can't be just me. This is difficult in your family dynamics, difficult in your peer relationships, difficult when it comes to navigating, work and career and other kinds of relationships. So I think a lot of us have some early learning in that way, but then went on to seek, mental health training. So got my doctorate in Chicago and then landed in Atlanta, which has been really the perfect work and the perfect place for the work that I do in terms of the population that I work with. I primarily work with Black people who are navigating racism-based trauma, which is a whole other dynamic of boundary issues in the world, but I also work with individuals, couples, and groups about how to form and how to even understand what a healthy relationship can look like for them, right? And kind of based on a lot of this family stuff and kind of social norms, a lot of people have a real unhealthy skew as to what a healthy relationship even looks like and feels like.
Going back to your childhood, when was the first time that you felt your boundaries had been crossed?
Oh, I'm not going to age myself, but that takes me all the way back. I would say probably pretty early in my childhood. Having immigrant parents who are from the Caribbean, right? There are a lot of rules about not only how to be traditionally Caribbean, but what it means to be in an immigrant family in America. We call it kind of being abroad. So there were a lot of rules, primarily rooted in performance, that I should achieve a certain thing and that I should want to be high achieving, and feeling a lot of boundaries being crossed in terms of things that I might have been interested in that didn't align with what these rules were, right? So for instance, me having an interest in gymnastics and dance, right, wasn't as concrete because it wasn't science based. It wasn't law, right? And for a lot of immigrant families, when they think about coming to the US to kind of excel as like a model minority, you got kind of two or three options. It's you be a doctor, right? A medical doctor, not even a psychologist. My doctorate doesn't count, right? It's being a medical doctor, a surgeon, that kind of doctor, being a lawyer, or for going into the army, right? But you have just a few of these different rules. So for me growing up, recognizing that those were not things that I was really thinking about, fantasizing about, working towards, what would happen in my family a lot was like questions about, well, why aren't you doing this? Why don't your grades look like this? Why do you want to be social, right? When essentially we're not here to be social. We're here to perform, be successful, right? And then also then take care of older family as I get older. So from an early age, kind of recognizing, hey, that doesn't suit me, but I don't have the power in this relationship to just do what I want to do, right? So recognizing that from an early age, I was already engaging in the people pleasing of it all, right? Because there would be real consequences if I didn't please my parents, if I didn't please my culture, right? And if I didn't please even what was happening in school with like peers and stuff, right? So if I wasn't, again, likable and kind of felt connected in this way, even if it didn't really land well with me, all of those external things became more valuable than how I felt about myself, right? And I didn't have modeling for valuing what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be.
That's beautiful. And what do you feel like for those who are listening, who are like, it's just so hard to say no? What tips do you have to help people learn to set those healthy boundaries?
Yeah. So one, which I do with all of my clients is offering, permission and offering empathy and validation that this is hard. It's hard not because you're doing something wrong. It's not hard because you are deficient in any way, but it's hard because it's hard. All right. We are social beings. We have been primed to want to connect with everyone that we can. Right. What happens is that it crosses a threshold to where we want to be liked and loved, and we want other people's approval, and we want other people's validation. That's where it gets into the gray area of that people pleasing. So we begin engaging in behaviors just to make sure that everyone likes me, and just to make sure that I'm seen or that I get some kind of like affection or quote unquote love from people. So that's what makes it hard. We are primed to people please, I'd say from the ages of maybe like 2 or 3, right? We're then beginning to be taught, hey, make sure that Bobby and Billy and Sarah like you. Make sure you're being nice to people. Make sure you're being nice to your grandparents. Make sure you say hi and give kisses and give hugs and be this good kid. So again, offering that validation of it makes sense why this is hard for you and why this might be the first time you're practicing this, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, doesn't matter the age, right? Tips that come along with that is being able to remind yourself and offer yourself permission to say no. That no doesn't mean that you're being mean. No doesn't mean that you're not a good or a nice person. No doesn't mean that you're less likable, but no is a way to offer you and this relationship clarity of what you like and what you don't like, right? I call boundaries, your rules of engagement, and everybody has their unique rules, right? So your boundaries are going to be different than mine because we have totally different histories, right? But your uniqueness doesn't make you wrong in that, right? The other piece is offering that setting boundaries oftentimes is viewed as I'm setting boundaries against you, right? But what I talk to clients about is that I'm setting boundaries for you and with you, right? I'm giving you the code to access me, right? I'm giving you this information because I actually want to be connected to you, not because I'm trying to set a wall up, right? With somebody who I'm trying to set a wall up, I'll put the wall up and say, you know what? We're not going to connect anymore. But if I'm saying, hey, this would be really helpful for me if you didn't do this anymore, or I actually really like this and I'd like to see more of that, that's me saying to you, oh, I want to be connected to you in some way, right? Mm-hmm. So let people come towards you, right? Give people the opportunity to meet you, right? But it takes words like no. It also takes words like yes. Right. So boundaries also isn't just about saying no to everything, right? No, I'm not doing this. No, I'm doing that. But also saying yes to the things that allow you to feel healthy in relationships, saying I like that, not only saying I don't like that. Right. So those are just some short ways, right, in which to set boundaries. 2, sometimes explanations can be really helpful for people. We walk around in the world with assumptions that people are thinking about us the same way that we're thinking about us, right? That because I am on my mind, I'm the top of Koya's mind, right? But it's really helpful for people to have information, right? How would you know that I don't like something if I don't tell you that I don't like it? You're thinking about your likes. I'm thinking about my likes, right? So giving people actually the information so that they can come towards you is actually your responsibility. It's not people's responsibility to guess what your needs are, to guess what you don't like and what you like. It's your responsibility to offer that into your relationship with people.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Yes and no, and kind of explanation. So would an explanation be like, no, I can't right now because I have to study, or I can't right now because I need to practice self-care. I can't do IG right now because I'm, just whatever that boundary is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And also offering yourself that there's a difference between offering an explanation from a place of fear and anxiety versus offering an explanation, because oftentimes it's helpful for people to put it in context. Right. So just kind of giving out no's without context doesn't help people really get a feel for, oh, well, what's going on with them? Like, I don't know what that is. But depending on how close the relationship is, depending on wanting to be seen and understood by people, you can offer a bit more of an explanation, right? Which again doesn't have to come from, I need to justify this. I need to prove this to you that this is valid, but that it might be helpful for you to know why this is happening and where that comes from as a means of getting to know me so that I can feel healthy in this relationship.
Absolutely. Have you ever said yes when you wanted to say no?
Listen, yes. Yes, you were just in my therapy session from last week. Yes. For me, I think as a healthcare professional, I think as a woman, there are all these ways in which I've been taught implicitly and explicitly that you say yes first and you figure out the rest on the back end, but that you make sure that you are there for people so that they know that you are dependable, reliable, loving. And what happens is that I say yes sometimes without calculating the risks of that yes, without calculating the costs of that yes, because again, I want to be perceived in a certain way. And for me, I know that my lean, and again, a lot of caregivers and people in the wellness space, the yes is because we have a desire to help. We have a desire to care, right? It's not even always about ego, right? But it's because I think that I do have something to offer this person and they are in need. And I want to be able to help people. I would love to save the world, right? So this is my way. I know I can't save the world, but I can save everybody who asks me for something, right? So it's the imbalance of that. And I notice it comes up a lot more, less personally for me, thankful to my therapist, but still comes up for me in the workspace where clients might ask for additional sessions, or clients might ask for longer sessions, or clients are kind of just pulling for some other things from me. And even if I recognize that I don't fully have it, oftentimes I'll lean into it because I see how much pain they're in. And because that causes me distress to watch them in distress, I try to offer them more things, right? So I'll say, yeah, we can have this session, but call me in between and then I can, see what we can do, and send me an email and I'll make sure that I respond to you no matter what time. So really having to walk myself through some of that boundary practice and recognizing, hey, when can you actually be with clients versus when do you need to be with yourself, with my partner, with my friends, get some rest and those kinds of things, right? But that's how it shows up for me when people are in distress.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That reminds me of what I was told by one of my counselors, is that you can't love anyone to the detriment of yourself. Because as soon as you say yes, when you want to say no, you are then harming yourself. And you do it because you don't want them to feel pain. So you're actually transferring that pain from them to yourself, saying, well, I can handle it.
Yes.
And sometimes we can, but if we keep doing that, eventually we get overwhelmed, which can lead to resentment, which can lead to burnout. So thank you so much for sharing that personal story.
Yeah.
And I love that you also, as a therapist, that you also get therapy. Can you talk to the importance of that for you?
Yeah. I see my investment in therapy not only for me personally, but also for me professionally, right? That if I am not taking care of myself in this way and engaging in this kind of self-love, that I can't be full and whole with my clients, right? So while I see it in some ways as a business decision, right? It helps me to feel kind of full and whole and to do my job well by being present, because that's basic, right? That is foundational for holding space for people. It's also helped me a lot in my personal life, right? So I've now been in therapy. I was telling, she's my longest relationship, so she better stick around. That we are now going on, this year will be 9 years that we've met weekly, right? That I make sure that it is consistent. I make sure that I offer myself this space because I know that I dole out so much energy for other people day after day after day, that even this 1 hour a week allows me space to focus on myself, right? And in me doing that and kind of pouring into my own cup and getting validation, right, within that, that allows me to actually kind of spread myself, right, in a different way. But realizing that when I wasn't doing that kind of work for myself, I was much closer to burnout. I was much closer to resent. I was much closer to just this everlasting fatigue that was there. So the space in and of itself, just me carving out that time feels really important, in addition to what we're able to process and talk about, right? It allows me to remind myself, and sometimes she's got to help me with this because I lose touch with it depending on the week or depending on the month, that I'm also human. That because I'm a psychologist doesn't mean that I get everything right, doesn't mean that my relationships are perfect, doesn't mean that I don't grieve, doesn't mean that I don't have family issues, right? But it allows me to remind myself that I get to be human and I get to offer myself the space to move through how human I am and how hard life can be sometimes, and that somebody can also be there for me.
I love that you call that out, that you're a human, because I feel like a lot of leaders, myself included, we get dehumanized. Like we're on this pedestal of perfection. And then once we say something or do something doesn't resonate, it's like we get canceled, slammed, shamed. Can you talk a little bit about how that feels and how we can prevent that from happening, or even just raise awareness about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that we're touching on this, while I have not had it happen in a grand or kind of any global way, it's happened to me quite a bit personally, right? So when I might talk to friends or family in terms of trying to decrease stigma around having anxiety, feeling anxious about something, feeling scared about a presentation coming up, kind of feeling cautious about something, navigating, really difficult relationships. And I was in an abusive relationship years ago, and practicing honoring that, right, with people. Immediately the response I got was like, anxious? But you're a therapist. How are you going to be anxious? Right. That was immediate, like questioning, like, how could you feel things? How could you have a hard time with things if you teach this to people? Navigating, relationships where I was violating my own boundaries, right? And someone else was violating my boundaries. Well, how can you help people? How can you do marital counseling if, you're struggling, right? So these ways in which oftentimes, again, because of the stigma and the lack of information people have about humanness and the lack of empathy and compassion around that, there are these rules that people set for healthcare professionals, right? That because you help people, right, you shouldn't need help, that you should be able to, people call it, you should be able to therapize yourself, right? And what we know, what we learn in the field in a more kind of heady way versus in practice, is that we can't offer a lot of this work to ourselves. That just because I know it and I can kind of move through a whole bunch of different techniques, right? I am the vessel, right? So what I would need and what would be really helpful for me is to tap into my community to help me do that work, right? So that I can offer that to other people. But again, I get to access the same kind of assistance and help that anyone else would. That just because of my training, right, doesn't rule me out as a human person. I have the same fallacies, the same gaps, right? The same pitfalls and things. Society is still the same, regardless of who I am, right? But again, oftentimes people don't understand and don't allow us to have that human piece. And oftentimes the comparison we might give is that, just because you're a medical doctor doesn't mean you don't catch a cold. All right. Doesn't mean you can't break your leg. And if I break my leg, I'm not going to suture my own leg and figure that out. I'm going to go to a leg doctor. Right. If I hurt myself in some way, I'm going to go to a doctor that can help me with that, because I can't do surgery on myself. Right. And oftentimes people are able to respond better when it's put in like medical language versus if your heart hurts. Right. Versus if the chemicals in your brain or kind of how things are flowing through your body, right, don't work in a certain way, I get to seek support for that. But people can latch on a bit to like, oh, I wouldn't fix my own leg. right?
Absolutely.
I can't do that for myself.
Absolutely. And I think it's something to call out as, so many people are into therapy and holistic health and things like that. And a lot of people will like idolize, like, oh, this person, they do this, they do that. But the other day I heard them say this one thing and that didn't resonate with me. So yeah, that they're not my people. And it's so funny how people can love 20 things about a person. And then there's that one thing and they're just like, oh, okay, well, that person is, since they have anxiety too. I heard that they have anxiety. So, and it's so funny, especially with all the things going on in the world, we're all experiencing it together. So it's heavy. And especially for people taking on a lot of emotions for other people, you have not only your own emotions, your own feelings, your own social media, your own news that you're taking in, you also are holding space for others who are bringing it. So that's why it's so important to heal the healers, and that healers have a place to release and have therapy and have a community and people that support them and realize that, as you said, we're all human and we all have to process our emotions. And to me, as a practitioner, when my emotions get heightened, that lets me know you're at your limit, sis. Mm-hmm. You're at your limit. So either practice more self-care, take yourself through those rituals, routines, and modalities to balance out your energy. And I think that's important for people to hear, because sometimes when you just look on the gram or you look on someone's website, all you see
highlight reel.
Yes, the highlight reel. Mm-hmm. So can you speak a little bit about what get loved up means to you? How do you get loved up, and how in your own life do you practice self-care to make sure that you're staying healthy so you can pour so much into others?
Yeah. Then when I think about, get loved up, I think about it in two ways. So one is allowing that in for yourself, right? How do I allow myself to feel this? What are the different areas that I can open up, right, in my body and my psyche to allow love in, right? But the first step, even before that, is even recognizing things as love. Right. What does that mean for different people? What does that mean for you? And again, even tapping back to boundaries, that we might have our own unique rules for you, right? That acts of love, right, might land very differently with me than they are for you. So we get to have our own codes with that. But what could it look like if I was to allow some of that in? What would that look like if I was able to offer myself something that feels a little bit different than what I'm familiar with, but allows me to feel warm, to feel seen, to feel validated, to feel connected to myself, that oftentimes we're not able to take in things externally if we're so disconnected and detached from ourselves, right? So I see getting loved up is not only allowing love in and being able to recognize it as love, but then being able to choose, right, what love looks like for you and how do you gravitate towards those spaces, right? So there's some ways in which some of my talks, some of the things that I offer are going to land with some people and won't with others, right? That wouldn't feel loving to them because they have other rules for their systems. They need other things, right? So for them, the responsibility and the opportunity would be for them to gravitate towards spaces where they can get that. Whereas some people will gravitate towards me because, oh, that fits, right, with my code or kind of my blueprint of love, right? So again, also allowing some flexibility and some, and how unique that can be for you, also for me, is an act of self-love to allow you to be yourself in that and find the spaces that can hold you up. Find the spaces that feel like ground for you. Again, find the spaces that feel like warmth and sunshine and clarity for you versus those spaces that bog you down.
I love that. Absolutely. Because it's so easy to find yourself bogged down. You're like, wait a minute, I was feeling great. And now all of a sudden it shifted. Things shifted. So I'm so excited for you to be presenting at the Get Loved Up retreat. For those of you all who haven't signed up yet, we are having a free virtual Get Loved Up retreat. And we're having Ayanna come, and she's going to be sharing about how to really use this boundary setting as an act of self-love. So can you give people kind of a little teaser of what they can expect from you during the Get Loved Up retreat?
Yeah, and I really loved filming it. You know, what I love about boundaries is that it doesn't have to be this vague thing. And I think because it's become such a buzzword, people can get really down on themselves about not knowing how to do it. And this person crossed my boundaries and I let this happen. So what I offer are tidbits about what the different boundaries are, all the different kind of aspects in life in which it can show up, and different ways in which you can verbalize that, and different ways to listen to your body, right, in order to respond to what your boundaries are, right? That can also help pull you away or kind of steer you a little bit more clear of burnout.
Hey, just hopping in here to remind you our Get Loved Up retreat is happening this weekend. You don't want to miss it. It's absolutely free. And it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You are going to enjoy sound healing, meditation, yoga, some of the world's greatest thought leaders, including Lisa Nichols, Anthony William, the medical medium, and so many, many more. We have Marie Forleo talking about business, Lauren Ash bringing you in with that soulful meditation, and so many other great and amazing guests. So go ahead and go to koyaweb.com/getlovedup-retreat and claim your space now. I hope to see you this weekend.
What's really great is that I offer not only information about the different areas in which you can practice boundaries, but some snippets, right, of some language. Oftentimes we have a hard time with not even just understanding what they are, but what do I do? What could I even say that's a boundary? So kind of walking you through some skills and some tools that you can access and actually implement in your life that could be really helpful. So different areas like physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, energy boundaries, right? These are all the different areas in which violations might happen. So what I offer you is just information for you to even recognize and how to reattune to your body, but also some things that you can say to honor your boundaries.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, where do you feel that right now you have something in your life where, okay, I need to set a boundary here or I'm not going to be okay?
Mm-hmm. For me, that shows up the most around work. All right. So now I'm in this, new year, it's top of the year. There are all these goals being set, all these intentions being set, and I want to do everything. I want to heal everyone I have access to in any way. So I'm really needing to set boundaries about how much time I'm devoting to creating content and planning, how much time I'm still being really present with my clinical caseload, who I'm actively seeing, my week-to-week clients, as well as downtime for myself. I can really get into the rush, into the flow of offering. I want to do more. I want to be expansive. I want to grow into myself and not kind of pigeonhole myself into things. But I really need to set some buffers around how much I can offer to my community, right? Because I tend to dole out more, and then I'm trying to do a recon mission on the back end of like, okay, just take 29-minute nap, just get it in, right? Versus, hey, this is how much you can offer, and that's okay. Then I'm already doing enough, if not more than enough, right? But I've got to make sure that I'm taking care of myself on the front end, not the back end. So that's where it's showing up for me right now. So I'm tapping into my friend circle. I'm tapping into my partner. Y'all know when I'm doing too much. And sometimes y'all can see the signs before I can. So also asking for them to, hey, if you notice something, just give me some feedback. Just let me know, like, you're doing a lot this week, aren't you? That's extremely helpful for me to have safe people who can also have some eyes on how I'm functioning when I can get like lost in the sauce sometimes.
I love that. Lost in the sauce. I get lost in the sauce a lot. Can you give me like a little example of like what your daily schedule looks like? How do you weave in? I know you say you take a nap, but like, what is do you have like a morning routine or a nighttime routine, or how does your day look like balancing out that self-care and your work and time for people that you love?
Okay. So for me, I don't have I have an ideal morning routine, but it's not strict in any way, because my days can look different based on what time my clients are scheduled. There's this myth that if you are an entrepreneur, you can set your own hours. You can just do whatever you want with your schedule. And while I do have maybe more flexibility than a quote unquote 9 to 5, my hours are still set by people's availability. So I can't just be meeting at times that only work for me if it doesn't work for my clients. So in those ways, I still have to do a lot of compromising with my schedule. So in the morning, what I would like to do is be able to wake up. I try to not listen to any words in the morning. I try to listen to music, if not instrumentals. So I'm not waking up taking in ideas of other people, right? So I'm not waking up taking in other people's thoughts, grievances, opinions, any of those things, because that actually kind of gets me rolling in a way that doesn't feel as settled to start my day. So I'd rather start the day listening to sound, whether it's kind of beats or just some calming music. I used to use guided meditation, but again, that was words. And I didn't really want to take in people's like voices in a way. I'm much better with music. So beginning my morning in that way, I take my vitamins. What I have been able to really appreciate, particularly about the pandemic, is that I'm spending a lot more time with my partner. So just being able to have that access to another person in the space allows me to feel just connected to the world versus just kind of moving through my days in an isolated way. So it's a helpful kind of touch base in the morning for me as well. I'll be honest, I don't eat breakfast every day. That would be a great routine, but when it's cozy and it's cold outside, it's harder for me to wake up. So I will own that. And I stop shaming myself about not having like a very strict routine. I start my day mid-morning. I know that if I start my day earlier than like 9:30, 10 o'clock, y'all don't want me. That's not the time for me to be doing work, right? So me setting a boundary around when I'm actually at my best is really not until like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, because I work until 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock most days. So I don't have a traditional 9 to 5. So I bump my hours down in the morning. And then I'll see between 6 and 8 clients a day, but I have to have breaks. I try to not see more than 3 people in a row, because it's a lot of content to hold in terms of the stories, but also just a lot of feelings, right? And I hold things very personally. I'm very protective of my clients. I get mad, I get sad, like we're in this work together. So more than 3 back to back, I tend to feel a bit loaded. So I try to have a break in between, whether I eat. Now, given the pandemic, just to make sure that I move around. And then in between that, I might have some meetings, I might have a supervision, clinical notes, things like that. And at the end of the day, I'll do my notes for the day. So that's the paperwork. I try to stay on top of that. And then in the evenings, I might have my meetings. So connecting with friends, or I'm on a different number of committees, boards, things like that. So some of the more like logistical stuff behind the scenes, connecting with my assistant, how did the day kind of run and flow? And I'll usually connect with my partner, either to kind of figure out what's going on with dinner or exercise or yoga, something like that, to kind of pull me very clearly away from work. But I've got to engage in something that brings me separate from other people's lives and other people's needs, and tapping into what we're needing in the household. And then we'll watch some TV, things that I like dramas. I don't like sci-fi stuff. So whether it's This Is Us or some Chicago show, something like that, I'll do that. We enjoy doing that together. And then usually around 10 to 11, I'm trying to wind down, just depending on what's going on. And throughout the day, I'm trying to check social media, but I've been a bit better for me the past few weeks about being able to kind of get in and get out, and not kind of doing that endless scrolling. That was really difficult for me last year. And then just kind of winding down and going to bed. The goal is always before midnight, but it just depends with that. And then starting anew. I see clients for the most part Mondays through Thursdays. And then on Fridays is where I have my personal therapy. So I start the day with my own work on Fridays. And then after that, I might have clients, I might have some corporate contracts to work through to kind of process. But if I don't, then it's doing anything that didn't happen during the week and beginning to prepare for the next week.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know sometimes it's so helpful just to dive into someone else's routine and see how that resonates. I like to do like a rapid fire just to give some ideas. What is the favorite book you've read in the last year?
Favorite book in the last year would be Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Yes, I love that one.
I have loved all of her work. I was introduced to her maybe 5 years ago, and then got to see her in person when she was on tour in Atlanta. And I really appreciate her transparency. I really appreciate the ways in which she talks about shame and parenting, and what she has navigated in different relationships, and really just confronting those parts of herself. I really honor what she offers to the world, and just the way in which she does it. She's quirky, she's kind of fun with it, but she can also really slow it down and offer like, hey, I had to do some really hard work to get to this place. And this is not magic. This is not fun all the time. But I've been through the ringer a bit. But what she has offered to the world really can offer to decrease the stigma around mental health issues, around family discord, around divorce, around parenting. And I really appreciate what she offers in that way, and just the words, the language that she has for it. So I loved Untamed. I was flying through. Then I had to slow down and like write something down. Then I had to come back. So that's top of the last year. Absolutely.
I love that. Thank you. Are there any books on mental health that you would suggest? I don't think I've ever tapped on this. And I think it's something that, especially being a woman of color, I researched a couple different books on mental health. Or do you have any favorites for yourself?
Yeah, one of my big favorites, again, because I work a lot in a relationship oriented space, and even if my clients are coming in as for individual issues, I think it's all connected to how they attach to the world and how they attach to people in their lives. But there is a book, one called Attachment, which I think is really great, which talks about your different attachment styles and how that relates to your childhood, and just to help people with some insight about how they relate to people as adults. Another book that we hail as kind of as a classic is called Codependent No More. It's by Melody Beatty. And it talks about ways in which we engage in a lot of self-neglect in order to care for our loved ones. This book tends to come from a substance abuse standpoint. That's where the term codependent first came about, is where you were in codependent relationships with someone who was addicted to something and engaging in a lot of enabling. But a lot of the updated research on codependence really just looks at how we operate in relationships in general, the people pleasing, the being really preoccupied with what we perceive that other people need and want out of life, and our willingness to neglect ourselves in order to make sure that we are taking care of someone else or rescuing them from distress, can really get us into a lot of binds and lead to anxiety disorders, depressive states, can really lead to episodes of bipolar disorder, manic, so all of those things. So I really love how she talks about it and how she's kind of updated her research in that way. What I love about mental health is that it's in everything. So while I don't necessarily kind of gravitate towards books that are like explicitly I think some of them are great, that are explicitly talking about mental health, anything about relationships, anything about business, anything right, relates to how we connect to people and our well-being and how safe that feels. And again, how connected and attached we feel in our general world. So I find mental health in every single thing, to the point where my friends and family are sick of it, right? But I find that there's a way in which, no matter what the content is, no matter what the movie is, no matter what the training is, it's always talking about something psychological and something related to how we are accessing and navigating different parts of our health. So I tend to connect with, books and people who aren't explicitly talking about mental health, but it all relates to how we're functioning in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And what has been, are you a podcast listener? What's been your favorite podcast?
I'm a podcast listener. I run the whole gamut of podcasts and I love it. I love it. I don't even have time to listen to all the podcasts that I love. But one of my favorites, and this is a mental health podcast, and not only because she's one of my close friends, but the Therapy for Black Girls podcast is one of my favorite podcasts. Not only because of the topics that it allows, Black women to access, but also allowing a platform and a space for Black women in the field to operate within their expertise, because we're not really offered many spaces, right, to speak to other issues outside of race and racism and culture and diversity. So I love what that podcast just offers to the field in general, and to let people know and to put it on the forefront that culturally responsive care is accessible. right? As more and more people of color are accessing wellness spaces and mental health spaces, the big question is we don't think that there are Black therapists, and we don't think there are Black women therapists. So I really love what the podcast honors, not only in terms of content and conversations and maybe disorder that they're talking about, but just the presence and the exposure of that. I love a good mystery. And I love like true crime stuff. So I love Wondery podcasts. They scare me, but I can't stop listening to them. So like Shrink Next Door or Dr. Death, they don't scare me enough to not listen to them, but they stimulate me in that way. I love Demetria Lucas's podcast, Ratchet and Respectable. I love the Daily podcast, just to kind of center me like, hey, what is happening in a way that feels objective, that doesn't kind of feel like it's pulling in all these different voices. I really respect and honor that podcast when I'm able to get to it. But that's been in my more recent rotation of podcasts when I'm able to get to them. I've been dabbling more the last 6 months in like audiobooks. I'm like, how do you listen to podcasts and audiobooks? Where's the room for this? So trying to bring in more books as well.
Absolutely. And what do you feel, is there anything you want to share with people listening right now? Is there any last thoughts?
You know what I think would be important for me to share as it relates to our conversation is that there's always opportunity for you to practice this work. There's always opportunity for you to offer yourself love in different ways and to be flexible about, and to get creative about that. What happens for a lot of us is that when we're in distress, we lose our creativity, right? We lose the space and the opportunity to imagine a different life for ourselves. So wanting to call people into that opportunity is ever present, right? Creativity is ever present, that you are allowed and you have permission to take that space, right? To kind of come back to yourself and come back to your source. And just having that as kind of a mantra or a reminder, right? That there's always opportunity to do this work, even if you've done it wrong, even if it feels late, even if you should have done it 15 years ago, whatever whatever people might say, or whatever social media sometimes might say, that there are opportunities ever present right in front of you to be able to reconnect to yourself if you do feel disconnected.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes,
if you could do anything differently in your life, what would you do? What would you do differently?
If I could do anything differently in my life, that's a great question. I would have taken risks in my career, what feels like risk to me, taken the risk to show up earlier in my career. I've only recently begun in the past few years to really kind of step into spaces where I'm stepping into wider audiences. I am tapping into that vulnerability, right? To kind of use my voice and to kind of offer my voice outside of the office. And I would have done that differently. I would have stepped into bigger spaces, and I would have stepped into bigger rooms much earlier in my career. And not only for the business aspect of it, not even related to or connected to finances or financial success, but to help with my own confidence. Right, that I shrunk a lot and I stayed in spaces that were safe, which is, stuff that nobody can see. It's me in here doing therapy, right? So I can't get it wrong. It's my stuff here. But really tapping into my voice and really tapping into what I can offer to people in spaces and settings. I would have done that a few years earlier than I did.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important for people not to be afraid, to put their best foot forward, to play big, play strong, put themselves out there. I absolutely love that. And can you share with people where they can find you?
Oh, yes. So the place that I run my mouth the most is Instagram. So you can find me at Dr _Ayanna _A. So it's at Dr_AYANNA_A. My website and my practice name is Ascension Behavioral Health. So that's where you'll find all the information about becoming a client, how I work, my training, things related to my clinical expertise, and also www.ascension Dr Abrams ABH is where that is more of my speaking and consulting with companies, groups. Still has a little bit of social media stuff on there as well. If you're interested in kind of workshops and presentations on mental health, on wellness, on racism-based trauma, on couples work. So that's where all of that is housed and will be housed as I'm getting some new websites. So also look out for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Cannot wait to hang out with you at the Get Loved Up retreat. So if y'all aren't signed up already, definitely go sign up for the free Get Loved Up retreat. When you sign up, you actually get a free digital copy of my book, Let Your Fears Make You Fierce: How to Turn Common Obstacles into Seeds for Growth. And until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world, one day at a time, one breath at a time. Peace and love.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.